Well, thank you very much, Maurizio. Cabinet Secretary, Professor Piattonia, ladies and gentlemen. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you to Scotland, to the city of Glasgow and the university for this 8th ECPR General Conference. This has been a very exciting and indeed exhilarating summer for Glasgow. We're still basking in the glow of the Commonwealth Games. And the Commonwealth Games, for the first part, saw a city swathed in warm sunshine and buzzing with visitors from all over the world. And it's fantastic that as we approach the autumn, something of that energy and vitality stays with us through such prestigious gatherings such as this. And indeed, some of the sunshine stays with us as well, which is good to see. Now, the ECPR conference is by any definition a major event. You draw some 2,000 delegates from across Europe and beyond to enjoy a quite dazzling range of panel sessions, keynote and special roundtable discussions. And so it's indeed a great honour and a great privilege that they chose to come to the University of Glasgow and that you will keep that city buzz from the Commonwealth Games alive. We're delighted you're here and we hope that you thoroughly enjoy your stay in Glasgow and in Scotland. Of course, I would argue, or at least suggest, that in choosing Scotland and in choosing Glasgow and this university for this conference, you have come to the right place and that there is no better place for this conference. I say this not because of all that the venue, that the city and surrounding countryside has to offer. Of course, that would be reason enough to come here. But I think your conference brochure certainly gives you a flavour, and I hope you will take the opportunity while here to go forth and sample it for yourself. These things are genuinely worthwhile seeing whilst in Glasgow. But rather, I would think that in coming here, you've come to an intellectual soulmate, to a place that's rich in a tradition of political thought and thinking. We're thoroughly European. From our founding principles in 1451, we were founded on the principles of Bologna University, with the great intellectual developments of the last 560 years, and we're very proud of that intellectual heritage and indeed of our intellectual influence in the world. Glasgow has seen figures such as Francis Hutcheson, Thomas Reid, and of course Adam Smith. And these and their other contemporaries created a dynamic centre of thought to power the Scottish Enlightenment and shape European thinking. It was during this time that Glasgow's distinguished history of teaching politics began, and indeed Smith in the 1760s giving a series of lectures at that time on justice, on police, on revenue and arms at the university. And today politics in Glasgow is flourishing and we are one of Europe's leading institutions for political studies. Our traditional strengths in political theory and comparative politics have been expanded to include international relations, human rights, and political communication. So I'd say the ECPR chose well. The University of Glasgow is a very good place to be, and it's immensely exciting and stimulating for all my colleagues in politics to have this conference here, to play host in an active and to participate in an active way in all the sessions that you have organised. So as scholars and political thinkers, I hope you'll feel at home with us, for we certainly do with you. But of course, there may be no better place to be for a conference such as this at this particular time than in this particular place, which is Scotland. We're delighted to welcome the Cabinet Secretary for Education and Lifelong Learning, Michael Russell, MSP, and Cabinet Secretary will be introduced shortly to you, and as he will no doubt confirm shortly, the independence debate, which is currently happening in Scotland, has unquestionably ignited people's interest in political debate and thought, and in a way unparalleled for many years. It has fueled people's interest, imagination, and self-reflection on what effective and representative government, nationhood and identity, power and self-determination might mean. And if the tale of recent years, especially around Western democracies, has tended to focus on an alarming and apparent indifference to participation in the political process, the Scottish independence debate has turned this narrative on its head. Perhaps for the first time in a very long time, people see that their vote will count. Whatever the side of the debate that you're on, people will see that the debate is very rich and is actually hugely important. And they're responding as a consequence. It's put the passion back into politics. So again, let me say you've come to the right place, not just for the setting, but at the right time, because it offers a sympathetic intellectual environment and because politics in Scotland at the moment has become politics with a capital P. It's relevant and it's real, and ECPR is welcome to this debate. In closing, can I personally thank all those involved in organising the conference? Of course, thank Maurizio as local organiser, but the whole organising committee, and for making ECPR in Glasgow possible. I hope that you have a great conference. I hope that it's one that stimulates your energies and your thinking and your work, and that as you return home, that Glasgow and Scotland will live long in your memory as a place to be. So thank you very much, and it's now my very great honour to hand over to Professor Simona Piattonia, who's the chair of ECPR. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is my distinguished pleasure to welcome everyone here at this 8th General Conference of the ECPR, and to this beautiful hall and beautiful university that I'm sure when I will tell my children that I was in a Hogwarts-like environment will be very, very envious. So my first thanks goes to, obviously, to Principal Muscatelli for hosting us here in this, again, beautiful city and beautiful location, and to the Glasgow City Council, who also supported our event today. Would not be fair, it would not be fair of me if I didn't thank the unfailing energy and dynamism of a colleague, Maurizio Carbone, who has very much wanted to bring us here to this university, and so we're very happy to be here. But of course, also I have to thank the people in the ECPR that work to make all this possible. First of all, the 2 executive committee members that are in charge of the portfolio that deals with the General Conference, Professors Klaus Goetz and Jonas Thalberg, as well as all the members of the central services that have worked in order to make this possible. Now, as you heard, I mean, this is a very interesting time to be here. It's very interesting for political scientists. It's an exciting moment, an exciting situation. So we'll take the opportunity also to explore fully, this moment. What else can I do if not just simply to wish you, a good conference, fruitful discussions. We're gonna listen to an excellent presentation, and in the end, let me end by saying that you also have the possibility to enjoy lots of haggis, lots of beer, and lots of whiskey. So, with moderation, however. Okay, so have a nice conference.
Okay. Good evening. As a local organizer, let me first say that today, tomorrow, and Saturday are the culmination of a very long journey that started in early 2011 when I submitted the bid to host this conference. Organizing events as big as this one is not easy. In fact, we in the local organizing team, we can take only a minimal part of the credit or the blame. Let me thus express my sincere gratitude to the University of Glasgow, the Glasgow City Council, the ECPR and its central services, my 2 assistants, Jolan and Scott, and the politics student helpers. If we manage to have students, and if we manage to have a generation of scholars and future politicians like the students that we have, that I managed to oversee over the past 3 days, I think we will live a very safe life. And actually, I should also mention the janitors who have helped us a lot in the past few days. Delegates probably will have spotted that there's been a slight change in the program. If you look behind me, probably you will not see Mrs. Nicola Sturgeon, but you will see Mike Russell, who has at the last moment decided to step in and to replace Ms. Nicola Sturgeon, who has been unable to join us tonight. And actually, I'm aware that she has sent her sincere apologies this is a very tough period and for the campaign, so we can understand that. On the other hand, I'm delighted actually to welcome on your behalf a senior member of the Scottish Government, Michael Russell, Cabinet Secretary for Education and Lifelong Learning. Michael has some flaws, of course. He's a graduate of Edinburgh University and has combined together successful careers in politics, the media, and is also a writer and a novelist. Let me try to summarize a little bit of his political career. Michael joined the Scottish National Party in 1974 and held a number of senior party posts before being elected to the Scottish Parliament in 1999, and then again in 2007, when he was appointed Minister for Environment. He then became Minister for Culture, External Affairs and the Constitution before being appointed Education Secretary, the post he still holds to this day. Given all his commitments, it's amazing to think that he also finds time to write and pursue his academic passion for Scottish history and literature. He is the author of 7 books, including 1 novel. Of course, and this has been said a few times already, we can't escape the independence referendum issue. Here in this great hall, we have scholars from all over the world who, as political scientists, are probably deeply interested in the implication of the independence referendum for nations beyond Scotland, Mr. Russell. Questions abound. And the question that we'll ask you to address in your welcome address are there new forms of parliamentary activity that could provide lessons or represent a challenge for larger nation states? Can Scotland show that smaller units have positive effects, for instance, in terms of the work of government being more effectively scrutinized or citizens feeling more engaged? Are there ways of dealing with social cohesion and religious tensions that seem to work in Scotland and they may be of a wider application? There are perhaps few better equipped and more eloquent to address such questions than the Cabinet Secretary, Michael Russell, and we are so grateful to him for stepping in to address the ECPR this evening. Before I hand over to him, Michael has one further feather in his cap. He can lay claim to be the first person to address the European Council meeting in Brussels in Gaelic back in 2010, following the fact that Gaelic was given co-official status as a language of the European Union. If I'm led to believe that Michael will not address the ECPR in Gaelic tonight, otherwise I will address the audience in my mother tongue, which is Calabrese, I am certain he will give valuable insights and much food for thought. And so, Michael Russell, Cabinet Secretary for Education and Lifelong Learning, in thanking you for agreeing to speak, may I now invite you to address the ECPR.
I am visibly and very obviously not Nicola Sturgeon, and my apologies for not being Nicola Sturgeon this evening. As political scientists, you will know, because you study these things closely, that whilst politicians' campaigns want to look smooth and well-ordered, inside sometimes the little hamster that drives them goes in all directions at once. This is one of those days, there's things happening all over Scotland, but I was delighted to be able to come and substitute for her for 2 reasons. One is I'm very pleased to welcome you here in such a distinguished gathering to Scotland at the right time and the right place, Anton. But secondly, because I'm always glad to be in Glasgow University. As the Minister for Education, I have responsibility for higher education. I work very closely with Anton and his colleagues across the country to encourage a sector which is the best performing higher education sector in the world. And if that seems a little bit too much of a boast, it is grounded in fact and reality. We have 5 universities in the world top 200. We have amongst the most cited researchers in the world, and it is something we want to continue to achieve in Scotland after independence. Those words have a nice ring to it, I have to say. You are in the right place at the right time. You are here a mere fortnight before the most important political event in Scotland's democratic history. You have ringside seats for the making of history, as well as what one might call the best laboratory for your studies. Representing, as you do, 50 countries as leading universities, students, senior academics engaged in the teaching and researching of political science around the world, you're incredibly well placed, not just to observe what is happening here, but to help us and others learn from it. And I hope you will write about what you see and hear in this place over the next few days and want to come back and study it afresh. We're honoured to have you here, but more eyes than yours are on Scotland at present. The level of international interest in Scotland is unprecedented, from the media, diplomats, government leaders, academics, and millions of people who know this country and who wish us well. Scotland's a historic European nation, and our people have gone to the four corners of the earth, sometimes sent unwillingly out of their homes, sometimes thirsting for adventure and new opportunities. Yet, as a nation, and I want to start with this thought, as a nation, as the entity of Scotland, we have not operated on the world stage for over 3 centuries. And in terms of the democratic era, we have never operated on the world stage. The referendum and the enormous worldwide interest it has generated is changing that. And we can confirm our position by ensuring that we rejoin the world as an 197th independent country. I was, as some of you know, the editor of the biography of one of Scotland's leading nationalist figures, the former MEP, MP and MSP, Winnie Ewing. Her slogan when she won the seminal Hamilton by-election in 1967, which started the modern period of continuous representation in Parliament for the Scottish National Party, is a good one for this period of time too. She fought the Hamilton election on the slogan, "Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on." And it's fair to say that this referendum is re-internationalising the people of Scotland. It's become evident to many of us that we could and indeed should have a part to play in the affairs of Europe and the world if we wish it, that we do matter as a country, we are not invisible, and that presidents and prime ministers are engaged with what we are doing. Most importantly, no matter what they are persuaded sometimes to say by the UK government, each and every one of them has acknowledged a basic truth. It is for us and us alone to make the decision, and that decision will be respected worldwide. Now, the result is, of course, still to be known. This is a hard-fought contest. It has many ups and downs. The momentum is presently with those who have a positive agenda for change, but to double Harold Wilson's dictum, a fortnight is a long time in politics. Much has still to happen in this campaign. But I want to mention tonight the process, because the process is of interest, particularly to you. And let me look at that process internationally and at home. On the world stage, the process has resulted in a heightened international profile, which makes us better able to promote our interests and new opportunities, better able to achieve international inward investment, better able to attract people worldwide to focus on Scotland in terms of their plans for the future. I was struck by last year's Ernst & Young Inward Investment Report, where they said in the context of the referendum that there's certainly no sign of investors being deterred from coming to Scotland. If anything, the report said the reverse appears to be true. And Scotland is increasingly outperforming most of the regions of England in the race for foreign direct investment. I had my own experience of international knowledge in New Zealand in March, where I represented the UK, strangely enough, at an international conference on the teaching profession. And at the start of the conference, those of you who know New Zealand know that they give wonderful Maori welcomes, which includes at the end of it lining up to rub noses with your hosts. And 20 education ministers from across the world lined up to rub noses with a very distinguished group of Maori chieftains. I was behind Arnie Duncan, the American Education Secretary. And as I reached the end of the line with a very small Maori chieftain, an old man, I leant forward, touched my forehead to his, rubbed my nose to his as I'd been told to do. As I leant back, my name tag fell open, and he pointed to it and said, "Scotland." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You're going to be your own boss soon. 12,000 miles away, people are interested in what's happening." Now, it's a truism to say that that process can be continued and built further, but that process requires a yes vote. A no vote brings it to an end. And I believe that our significant economic and political advantage would be turned to detriment. We would go back to what some of you will recall if you have written and studied the first devolution referendum in '79. We'd go back to being the cowardly lion portrayed in the famous Turnbull cartoon during that referendum, and characterised by the Scottish writer William McIlvanney in an angry poem after the event as a creature terrified by the distances of freedom. The referendum has given Scotland a look at the possibilities Scotland could have as a normal global nation. And we mustn't go back to looking through the bars. As an outward-looking, international and engaged Scotland, that would be good for us and good for the wider world. We'd be a positive contributor to the European Union, to other international organisations. As a welcoming country, we will celebrate the contribution that those who come to Scotland from elsewhere make to the richness of the country and to the wealth of the country. I'm always proud to quote William McIlvanney again when he called Scots a mongrel nation. Now, as academics, you know that the free exchange of scholars and researchers is the lifeblood of your institutions. This university and universities across Scotland benefit enormously from those who come here because of the excellence of teaching and research. And yet, because of political considerations at Westminster, the UK government is making the job of attracting overseas students harder. I've campaigned with the university principals, all the university principals in Scotland, on this issue. For example, the UK government has scrapped the post-study work visa, and universities and society in Scotland are already feeling the impact. None of Scotland's policies, and especially not our educational policies, should be driven by the xenophobia of UKIP, nor of their frightened appeasement by Tory Eurosceptics. In an independent Scotland, we can choose a different way. For a start, we will reintroduce an effective post-study work visa system as a first strong signal to the international community of our values and our outward-looking focus. And it will, of course, benefit the Scottish economy, Scottish higher education, and this university very quickly. Now, those are important aspects, the international aspects of the debate that we're having, and the people will make their choice on in 2 weeks' time. A great deal of political academic interest has been focused on that process, and it will be the subject of ongoing work. But most nations are where they are, in constitutional terms, through a combination of history and happenstance. Scotland has a rare opportunity for our citizens to come together to decide our future in an impeccably democratic manner. And now I'll move into the domestic process. We can be proud of the Edinburgh Agreement, in which both the Scottish and UK governments in October 2012 came together to agree the legal foundation and the framework for the referendum. I want to pay tribute to this audience to the constructive role played by the Westminster government and Westminster ministers in making the Edinburgh Agreement happen. We both signed up to respecting the outcome and then to implementing it in the best interests of the people of both Scotland and the UK. And in welcome external validation of that referendum, I think we're all pleased when John Kerry pointed to it as a positive example of how these things could and should be done. Now, we live in a troubled world, and the events of recent days shows how that troubled world can touch us even here. We pray for peace, we do everything we can within our capacity to bring peace about. But we can't force the world to change. That illusion always ends in tears. But we can, by our words and more significantly by our deeds, set an example to the rest of the world to show how deciding fundamental political and constitutional issues, long-standing, very long-standing political and constitutional issues, can be done democratically, peacefully, constitutionally, and respectfully. Scotland's given much to the modern world in terms of invention and innovation. If we do achieve a yes vote in 2 weeks' time, the demonstration of a peaceful path to change will be a great gift, particularly to a world in conflict. It will show that such democratic change is best and can be achieved peacefully over generations. It will also show that ultimately all power lies not in elites or in establishments, but in the people themselves. For the process of change in Scotland in the past few years has been driven and steered by a grassroots movement, the like of which no politician alive today in this country has ever seen, and I include myself in that number. There is nothing as strong as the power of an idea. And it's that idea of a better, a fairer, a more just, a more equal Scotland has brought all parties and none into loose groupings the length and breadth of Scotland to debate, to discuss, to canvass, to leaflet, to organise and to contend in a positive and respectful way that deserves study and emulation. I read today a piece on the Guardian website which talked about the broad and deep textured movements that have arisen in Scotland, in every part of Scotland, which are focused on creating something better than we have. I've undertaken literally hundreds of meetings across Scotland over the last few months, and I think at each and every one I've quoted the words of John Adams, the second American president, as a type of definition of what this Yes movement is inspired by or what it seeks to achieve. Writing in 1776, as his country made its momentous decision, he remarked upon the unique opportunity his fellow citizens had to, and I quote him, build government anew from the foundations and make it as we choose. And that's the opportunity that has inspired people in Scotland. It's arisen here for the first time. It's one that motivates the widest and broadest cross-section of the community, and it continues to do so. Indeed, it's growing ever broader and wider as we enter the closing stages of this wonderful period. The Scottish Government published its white paper last November. I don't think any country has gone into this process better prepared, better organised, better galvanised, better financed about independence. But that's not really the point. The point is not really the cost of setup. The point is a vision that people can have of something they want to do and then organise themselves in the way to achieve it. What happens after the vote? But it's also worth considering the lessons of the Scottish process in that regard. There's not yet a consensus about how Scotland should be governed in constitutional terms. But there's always been, throughout this long period of change, a widespread agreement that we will work within the system as it is at any given time to improve life in Scotland. That might seem a straightforward point, but it underlines the essential unity and cohesiveness of Scotland as a nation, and that's something to build on. Committed Home Rulers in the Labour and Liberal parties, and then in the emergent SNP, did everything they could for their communities and country at a time when Scotland was governed only by Westminster. I served as the first SNP chief executive, and I was responsible for issuing the membership cards, amongst other things. And on those membership cards, for many generations, there were two objectives. One was the achievement of independence, but the other one was the furtherance of all Scottish interests. And it was that kept people together and working together. Now, the Tories, who were root and branch opposed to devolution in 1997, within 2 years were sitting as part of the opposition within the Scottish Parliament. The SNP has worked as the main opposition since 1999 and since 2007 as what I hope has been an effective administration in a devolved Parliament that doesn't reflect the full measure of our aspirations. A devolved Parliament with some interesting features, some uniquely innovative features, and the transparency and accountability of the Parliament is extremely important to me personally as one of the founding business managers. But although there has been disagreement about where we get to and how we get there, we've all been able to work within the structures to improve the lot of Scotland. That's the way it has been in the past. I am sure after the 18th of September that will be the way that we will move forward. It is only a truism to say that after the 18th of September there will no longer be yes and no. The badges will come off our lapels and there will be one Team Scotland working together to chart and negotiate our way forward. I believe, of course I believe, the process that we have been through will have improved this nation despite the outcome. But I also believe that the ultimate improvement, the much greater improvement, can only come with a yes vote. And with that decision, the unity of purpose that we have seen again and again through the Scottish Parliament will be found again. It will be energised by possibility and rooted in practicality. It will allow us to go back to where I started, to rejoin the world with confidence, bringing our wealth, actual, educational, social, cultural, and even spiritual, to the service not just of all of us here, but within the wider context. Some here will remember from their school days that challenge made by Macduff in Shakespeare's Macbeth, "Stand Scotland where it did." And the answer today, which I hope you will see during your visit here, is different from the one given 5 centuries ago on a stage in London. We are no longer afraid to know ourselves. We can now say that we stand not only firmly rooted in our past, but with our eyes fixed on a brighter horizon, on a partnership of equality in the world. That is what is being contended for. That is what will be decided 2 weeks today. Thank you.